All right, welcome and good evening. It's good to be with you. I'm coming at it to you from a little bit of a different location, so my lighting's a little bit different. Sorry about that. But here we are, and another presentation of Sefer Academy. And so as a result here, we're going to try to do some things I hope you guys are going to enjoy a little bit. We're going to be looking at a subject here tonight that's going to be very interesting. It's called the Wrath of Indignation. And I hope that you guys are going to find this interesting. I spent a little bit of time on it, trying to prepare for this, and found some interesting things. So with that, let us see what we can discover if I can, in fact, get a PowerPoint presentation going here. Let's see here. Well, that doesn't look good. All right. I'm going to keep looking here and see what I can find while we get ready. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, we've got that. I just need to put that here. So at any rate, my friends, when we talk about the wrath of indignation, there is a time of indignation, a time when the whole land will be destroyed. Have we arrived at such a time? There are those who believe that the current course of action will remain efficacious. That which worked before will work again, given the assumption that the path of decadence has no accounting before it, that the defilement of the sacred has no reconciliation, and that the demoralization of society causes no measurable degradation. But is this true? Whether we discuss the pragmatic disposition of these progressions or the failure of the logic which governs the decision-making, Yahuwah remains no respecter of persons, and judgment comes with blessing or with cursing. And the casus belli of the cursing remains the same, not hearkening unto the voice of Yahuwah Eloheka, and failing to guard and to do all of his commandments and statutes. The fool says in his heart, there is no Yahuwah, and yet when the Ruach Yahuwah is expelled from the soul, often it is not a demon or devil that rushes in, but rather abject fear. And when the fear becomes resident, then it becomes the decision maker. He who makes decisions out of fear or to mitigate the fear makes error, and error brings judgment. We are not called to fear the things of this earth. It is written, there shall not any man be able to stand before you all the days of your life, as I was with Moshe. So I will be with you, and I will not fail you nor forsake you. Be strong and of good courage, for unto this people shall you divide for an inheritance the land, which I swore 7 oaths unto their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may guard to do according to all the Torah, which Moshe my servant commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper whithersoever you may go. That's from the book of Joshua. Yet in the West, we are ruled by fools who have taken this view. However, they assert themselves as fearless individuals. Fearless as they hide behind armed guards, armed security systems, armed special forces, and military machinery, the cost of which may exceed every budget, all in order to ensure that those who harbor fear in their heart rather than their maker can pose as fearless in this world. We know that to be of Yasharel requires not a bloodline, but rather a confession of faith in the Father and the Son whom he sent. But there is another camp, another tribe, who harbor a faith in something else rather than confessing the name of Yahuwah Yahusha. They cling to a faith in the things of Babylon, a faith centered around fertility rituals, mythological worship of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the practices of ancient paganism, to put at ease their fear of life on this earth and the death which follows it. And so it is that men of fear cower behind towers of engraved images, the faces of the powerful and the dead who have preceded them, whose images are ensconced in discs of precious metals and written dead instruments, which declare themselves to be neutral arbiters of financial transactions, and whose accumulation creates a status known as wealth. But it is these men who use their wealth to inflict death and injury on others, and who amassed the weapons of war that they might not experience the affliction they so willingly delivered to others, including the mere mortals and the meek, known as the innocent, the men, the women, and the children, who find the comfort of the fearless life provided by Yahuwah. The people of this world are now being pushed into a conflict to secure the wealth of those who live in fear. And in this conflict, mankind is soon to see the wrath of the indignation of Yah. Such begins our discourse tonight. And with that being said, I'm going to attempt to share the screen here now and to see what we can do. And it looks like we've got something going here. Okay, good. So this is a Sefer Academy production. As I've mentioned before, all discussions here are taken from the Sefer Millennium Edition. You can visit us at sefer.net, or you can get further instruction at seferacademy.net. Tonight's presentation, The Wrath of Indignation. So we began with a verse here from Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 50:25. Yahuwah has opened his armory and has brought forth the weapons of his indignation. For this is the work of Adonai Yahuwah Tsebaot in the land of the Kasdim. Interesting, the land of the Kasdim. Okay. Well, let's see what we know and if we can find anything here. The weapons of indignation are coming forth to work destruction in the land of the Kasdim. Where would we find such a land? Well, let's look at some words first, and let's see what we can find out here. Okay, so we know that indignation here, the word used in this particular passage is this word za'am. Za'am. Strictly, it means to froth at the mouth. You know, to have the rabies, right? Fury, to be so mad you're frothing at the mouth, figuratively, especially displeasure with sin, anger, indignation, or rage. Now, this comes from the word za'am, which is its root, which means literally to foam at the mouth, to abhor, to find abominable, to have indignation. All right, now what about the Kasdim? Okay, now the Kasdim, this is going to be interesting. I think you guys will find this interesting. Because the Kasdim, we use this particular construction of the word for Chaldeans, Kasday or Kasdim. This is age 3679, Kasday or Kasdim. Now you can see here that in its discussion, it says, well, this comes from 3778, Kasdi, right? Kasdi. Also, Kasdima. Okay, toward the Kastites into Chaldea. So we know these as the Chaldeans or the Chaldeans. All right. So, but what's critical about our instruction here is this right here. These Chaldeans are descendants of Kesed. Okay? The Kasdim or the Chaldeans are descendants of Kesed. Okay. And these are also astrologers, as if proverbial of that people, Chaldeans, Chaldees, inhabitants of Chaldea. Chaldeans, Chaldees, or inhabitants of Chaldea. Okay. So we're going to find out who is Kesed that these guys are descended from. We're descendants of Kesed. Okay, well, who's he? Well, let's see. This is from Genesis chapter 22. And it came to pass after these things that it was told to Abraham, saying, behold, Milcah, she has also borne children unto your brother Nahor, whose, his firstborn, whose was on first, what was on second, who was on first, what was on second, I don't remember, but whose was his firstborn, and Booz was his brother. Whose and Booz. Okay. Kemuel, the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Chatzol, and Pildash, and Yidlaf, and Bethuel. And Bethuel begot Rivka. Now you recall Rivka, she would end up marrying Yitzchak. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Reumah, also bore Teva, Gaham, Tahash, and Ma'akah. Now, this is an interesting name here because Ma'akah is going to be the tribal name of the Maccabim, the Maccabim. But here we see that the father of Aram, Kemuel, the father of Aram, this is interesting because, of course, Aram is the father of the Aramaic language. So the Aramaic language doesn't exist before Kemuel, the father of Aram. But the person we're interested in here is Kesed. Kesed is going to be the father of the Kasdim or the Chaldeans, who is the son of Nahor, the brother of Abraham. So you can see that these sons are going to be of the same seed as Abraham, but Abraham is not their father, although they are of the same seed. Okay. So the Kasdim, the Chaldeans, are those who call themselves by the tribe of Chesed, and their civilization began in Assyria. Behold, the land of the Kasdim. This people were not till Ashshur founded it for them that dwell in the wilderness. Then they set up the towers thereof, and they raised up palaces thereof, and he brought it to ruin. So you see here that the Kasdim were dwelling in the wilderness, but Ashshur founded the Assyrian Empire. Ashshur. They began in Assyria. They founded the Assyrian Empire, founded by Ashshur, a different individual from the tribe of Kesed, or the Kasdim. Okay, so the Kasdim, the Chaldeans, or those who call themselves by the tribe of Kesed, and their civilization began at the hand of Ashshur. But who is Ashshur? It's a question. Ashshur, apparently, from 833, in the sense of successful, right? In the sense of successful, Ashshur was the second son of Shem. All right. But this name comes from 833, Ashshur, which is the primitive root, which means to be straight, especially to be level, right, or happy. Now compare this with the word Yashar. And we compare these two, we can see that we have something interesting going on, because you see Ashshur here, Aleph Shin Resh, compared to Yashar, Yod Shin Resh, right? So these two are quite similar, and similar in their authority. And we see that Yashar means also straight, literally or figuratively, just, righteous, or upright. Just, righteous, or upright. Okay, and the differences between these two have to do with this one, of course, begins here with the Aleph, and this one begins with the Yod. This is going to be the ultimate head of authority as compared to the working hand of Yah in these two words. And of course, we know that Yashar, when you put the Aleph Lamed at the end of this, becomes Yashar El, which is often mistranslated as Israel, but it's actually Yashar El. Okay, let's continue. So not only was Assyria the civilization of the Chaldeans, but so was and is Babylon. So let's take a look. Here's a passage from Yeshayahu 13, where it reads, "And Babel, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Kasdim's excellency, shall be as when Elohim overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah." Now here we see very clearly that Babylon, is the beauty of the Kasdim's excellency. This is not just some little deal. Babylon was their best effort. And what does it tell us? It shall be overthrown. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation, neither shall the aviv pitch the tent there, neither shall shepherds make their fold there, but wild beasts of the desert shall lie there. And their houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the island shall cry in their desolate houses, and the dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Interesting. So for purposes of prophetic realization, the Chaldeans are those who are of Babylon, and Ashshur is an upright leader. This becomes important as we see the prophecy before us. And Babel, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' excellency shall be as when Elohim overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arab pitch the tent there, neither shall shepherds make their fold there. So it will be destroyed, as was Sodom and Gomorrah. This hasn't yet happened. And it will never be inhabited again. And then we see that there will be creatures there. Now, this specifies doleful creatures, which the word there is oak, meaning a lone howling creature. Owls will be there. Bat Yana, which really means the daughter of the ostrich, owls. Satyrs, or sair, or devil he-goats. Wild beasts, which are howlers, and dragons. And the word there is tanin. However, the Chaldeans have a migratory history marked by an aleph beit that they carried with them in their migration, a calendar which they followed, and the custom of their practices in astrology and Babylonian worship. Rather than take the name of the tribe Nahor, they took the name of the son from which they were derived, namely Kesed, and became the Kesedim, or Chaldeans. As they migrated, they became known as the Chaldee, the Chaldee, the Keldi, the Kelti, and ultimately the Celtic people of Central Europe. In Britain, they would be called the Kuldees. Their calendar is best exemplified in the Kolini disc. The markers of astrology would be the fixing of the Zodiac, and the Babylonian practices would include the fertility rite of Ishtar and solstice fertility rite of Nimrod. So here we're going to see, this is one graphic that I was able to find that's kind of illustrative, not exactly perfect, but it's closer to what we saw before. Now you're going to see here that we have, we've got some things going here. This correctly specifies the Gaels, right? The Gaelic people here. The Celtic people here in this kind of bright yellow. The Gauls and the Gaels were very related to one another. And the Gauls, of course, would come all the way here into Portugal, and up through Western France and all through here, the Gauls and the Gaels. This tells us that the Celts were originally the northern Cimmerians or the southern Cimmerians, and that they migrated from Galatia. Well, I'm not so sure that Galatia was actually here at all ever, but rather this was the Hittite Empire right here. This was the Hittite Empire. And the Hittites carried with them a paleo alphabet like the Hebrew. That paleo alphabet would migrate into the Greek Cyrillic, which would eventually become the Russian Cyrillic. It would also migrate, this language would migrate into this portion of northern Italy in the form of the Etruscan alphabet, and would migrate into this portion of the United Kingdom as the Colbran alphabet. So these two alphabets were consistent with the Paleo-Ivrit, and they were alphabets that give us an indication that their origin was here in the Hittite Empire. Okay, now this idea of this being Northern Cimmerians or Southern Cimmerians, remember that this tribe is another tribe going by a child of someone. And in this case, they were going by the name Gimir. Now, in your Bible, you're going to read that as Gomer, but Gomer is not correct at all. It was Gimir. And you can see the Gimirians would become the Cimmerians or the Cimmerians. Now, this tribe of Gimmer was located here north of the Black Sea, modern-day Ukraine, and they were displaced by migratory tribes coming in from the Indus River valleys. And so they migrated down here to what's called the area of Sinope on the Anatolian Peninsula. And this is where we'd find the Synoptic Gospels, because this is where Marcion was located, in Sinope. And he was one of the first editors and compilers. Gimer, or actually Gimerians, not Cimmerians or Kimmerians, but Gimerians. And it's one tribe and not necessarily accurate as to who the Chaldeans or the Kelti actually were. Okay, so in that respect, I have a disagreement with this drawing. But we do see the central migration and the central focus of the Celtic people being here. This is where they were, primarily here, not here. There were Kuldis here and here. There were Picts up here, but for the most part, these were Gaelic and Cumric people. Okay. So let's see. Now, let's talk about their calendar. The calendar here, I'm going to read here what we have here on this, the Kolini Calendar. The Kolini Calendar is the 2nd century Celtic calendar found in 1897 in Kolini, France, hence its name, the Kolini Calendar. It is a lunisolar calendar that has been used to reconstruct the ancient Celtic calendar. This was the calendar used in Europe before the Gregorian calendar arrived. Each Celtic month started on the 6th day of the lunar cycle, according to Pliny the Elder. This is the date of the quarter moon, the easiest lunar date to confirm by direct observation. The months were called Samonios, Dumanios, Rivros, Anagantios, Ugronios, Curios, Giamonios, Semivisionios, Equos, Elenvivios, Edrinios, and Catlos, and there were 2 intercalary months, Quimonios and Sonosingos. So this was the Kolini calendar, lunisolar calendar, used throughout all of Europe by the ancient Celtic people. Now, in addition, we see the use of zodiacs. This particular picture here is a picture of the 12 signs of the zodiac, which is found to this very day on the floor of the foyer entering into the Church of the Dormitian in Jerusalem. This church is a very large church, Christian church attached to the old city. And it's right next to the Tomb of David in Jerusalem. And when you first enter into this church, you're going to find all of the signs of the zodiac on the floor. This is consistent with Chaldean practice. Another Chaldean practice were the fertility rites. One of these rites is the fertility rite of Ishtar. Ishtar is an incarnation of nature at the spring equinox into a goddess and is one of the earliest forms of documented worship. Fertility is marked with eggs and fertile animals such as rabbits, and the celebration includes eating a ham to commemorate the slaughter of the boar that killed Tammuz, the son of Ishtar. The birthday of the sun god, Tammuz, the son of Ishtar, was reportedly born on winter solstice between December 22nd and 25. Invictus Sol, the unconquerable sun and god of Constantine, was also born on the shortest day of the year, or the Saturnalia, between September 22nd and September 25th. This is the fertility worship of Nimrod and is practiced on December 25th. So such are the markings of the Castine or Chaldeans or Celtic people. Okay. So let's get on to the prophecy if we can. The burden of Babel, which Yeshayahu, the son of Amoz, did see. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones for my anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. Yahuwah Tsebaot musters the host of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even Yahuwah, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. This is from Isaiah 13, 1 through 5. So we see in this prophecy, they come from a far country and from the end of heaven, even Yahuwah and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Now I put out here for us the Ivrit so that we can take a look at what we see, right? Bayim me'eretz, bayim me'eretz, bayim, they come or they go. From me'eretz, from eretz, a far country. Merchach, mechsek hashamayim, from the heavens, even from heaven, hashamayim. Now we see here three words, Yahuwah ukele za'amo. So technically, I probably should have included this in our phrasing, that Yahuwah would be included in this, because what we see in this phrasing here, and I'm going to look at it the next slide. In fact, I think we'll see. La chabel chal haaretz. When we look at this next slide, we'll see here. You can see that we have a prefix right here. Those of you who study Hebrew with me know that this is a prefix, and this is the prefix u. And of course, it means and, right? It means and. Okay, so then we have this kili, right? Kili. All right, so this kili, we're going to talk about what this comes down to, and this zamu. Now, the za'am, this is our root word here, za'am, and za'am means indignation. Kili means weapon, right? Kili, weapon. Za'am, indignation. And then what is this? This is a holum over the vav in the prefix. So because of that, this means his. Well, who is the his? It's Yah, right? This is the weapons of his indignation, of Yah's indignation. You see, the weapons of Yah's indignation. So kili, this means, this word kili, this is a masculine noun, but it means something prepared. Any apparatus, such as an implement, a utensil, or weapon. Could mean artillery. It could mean furniture. It could mean a pot. It could mean a tool, or it could mean a vessel or a weapon, any of those. And it comes from the word kala, which means to end, whether intransitive, to cease, right? To accomplish, to consume, to utterly destroy. Okay, to utterly destroy. All right, that gives us a pretty good idea of what we're talking about here when we're talking about his weapon of indignation. His weapon of indignation. All right. So let's continue with this prophecy and see what it says. Okay, directed to the land which is replacing fallen bricks with hewn stones. You know the prophecy in Isaiah 9:11, Yeshayahu 9:11. You know, the bricks have fallen, we will rebuild with hewn stones. The sycamores have fallen, we will plant cedars. All of this is the philosophy of, we're going to make America great again. We're going to build back better. We're not going to take it. We're just going to continue on and be even stronger. We're going to come back better, right? That idea brings a cursing with it. And in that cursing, one portion of that cursing is found in Isaiah 10:5, where it says, "O Ashshur, the rod of my anger, and the staff in their hand is my indignation." Okay, so what we're seeing here is that Ashshur, if you recall, Ashshur was the same one who built the cities for the Kasdim, Ashshur. But you might also recall that Ashshur, Assyria, was the land that was the most dangerous kingdom for a long time, because the Assyrians had perfected the compound bow, and the compound bow was so powerful that its firepower was not exceeded until World War I. Only then were weapons created that could exceed the firepower of the compound bow. So this is, we're talking about Assyria here, Assyria, or Ashshur. And we saw that Ashshur, the root of Ashshur, means the righteous one, or the straight one, the straight one. The straight one, he's the rod of the anger of Yah, and the staff in their hand is Yah's indignation. And what's going to happen? Well, I will send him against the hypocritical nation, against the people of my wrath. I will give him a charge to take the spoil and to take prey and to tread them down like mire. Howbeit, he does not mean to do so, neither does his heart think so, but it is in his heart to destroy and cut off nations, and not just a few. Okay, now I brought this slide in here so that you guys could see some information that is worthy of consideration. Kind of part of the impetus for my delivering this particular message tonight, to talk about the weapon of indignation. Because I want you to consider here that we have this thing out here that is in the hands of Russia. Russia probably remains the world's leader in non-nuclear EMP weapons, what they call NNEMP, also called radio frequency weapons, RFWs. The marriage of NNEMP to drones or cruise missiles equipped with sensors to follow high-powered electric lines and target control centers and transformers introduces a new major threat to national power grids. But Russia also has a super EMP. Now, these are specialized for what they call HEMP attacks. Now, a HEMP is a hypersonic EMP. That is to say, the super EMP is loaded on a hypersonic missile, and it generates potentially 100,000 volts per meter or higher, greatly exceeding the US military hardening standard of 50,000 volts per meter. So this is going to be double whatever we've hardened. This is double its strength. The super EMP is a first strike weapon, according to Alexei Veshenka, who describes Russian nuclear weapons specifically designed to make extraordinarily powerful hemp fields as Russia's means for defeating the United States. Hypersonic vehicles are potentially a new avenue for surprise hemp attack. Flying at 50 to 100 kilometers at altitude, the optimum height of burst for super EMP warheads. So, 100 kilometers is going to be roughly 220,000 feet, and 50 is going to be 100, right? Okay. So this is taken from a piece that I took off Strange Sounds. I have the citation there. You guys can look at the citation if you want. It's right there. Electromagnetic pulse attack is Russia about to nuke space to launch a massive EMP attacks to destroy the US and Western allies. That was published on March 8th, 2022. Now, there's another piece here that I'm referencing for you guys, and you might want to screenshot this or do some other form of a save so that you can look this up. This is really a detailed piece. So Russia calls their hemp weapon, their hypersonic electromagnetic pulse weapon, they call it a weapon of indignation. And so here you see in the Russian, Oruzhne negodavania, Oruzhne negodavania. So you can look this up further to see Russia EMP threat, the Russian Federation's military doctrine, plans, and capabilities for electromagnetic pulse attack by Dr. Peter Vincent Pry, the executive director of the EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security, who published this piece in January 2021. So let's return to the prophecy. The word that Yahuah spoke against Babel and against the land of the Kasdim, but Yirmiyahu, the prophet, declare ye among the nations and publish, set up a standard, publish and conceal not. Say, Babel is taken, Baal is confounded, Merodach is broken in pieces, her idols are confounded, her images are broken in pieces. For out of the north there comes up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart. both man and beast. Yahuwah goes on to say in chapter 59, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babel an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, and none shall return in vain. And Kasdima shall be a spoil. All that spoil her shall be satisfied, says Yahuwah. Because ye were glad, because ye rejoiced, O ye destroyers of my heritage, because you are grown fat as the heifer at grass, and bellow as bulls. Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bore you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Because of the wrath of Yahuwah, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Everyone that goes by Babel shall be astonished and hiss at all of her plagues. But as for the remnant and all this, keep this in mind when we talk about the wrath of indignation. This is from Yeshayahu, Isaiah 26, verse 20 through 21. Come, my people, enter into your chambers and shut your doors about you. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little moment, until the indignation be passed over. For behold, Yahuwah comes out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth also shall disclose her blood and shall no longer cover her slain. This concludes our presentation of Sefer Academy tonight. I know it's a bit brief, and I want to thank you guys for staying with me. Let's see if we've got any questions here that we can deal with. I know this is a bit short here tonight, but needless to say, we have been traveling in the wilderness, and our travels have taken us to places where I had absolutely no access to anything. And so we just returned to town last night. So we kind of had to do some things. So we have some things about Germany rearming. Yes, this is true. They've launched a $100 billion program to rearm and have even reopened the Panzer factories, which is very interesting. Of course, recently, we're going to be talking about this tomorrow in detail on our presentation that I'm going to be doing with Jessica Knock tomorrow. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of this. We're going to be talking more about some of the things that we saw in election fraud and so forth, and why we see that we're in a very, very peculiar space. Now, I want to be able to share with you just a little bit tonight. I don't have a long time to talk to you about it, but if you look at the situation that's currently developing in Lithuania, this is news that you guys can research. The Lithuanian situation is pretty drastic. Lithuania has closed the corridor between Russia and its exclave called Kaliningrad. And because that's been closed, Russia considers it an act of war. And the United States has said NATO stands 100% behind Lithuania. So we've really arrived at the crux, if you will, between NATO and Russia. So we're going to see some things happen. So keep these things in mind. You guys can take a look. Now, Alan Rostovich writes, what do you think about the 13th month? Does that make sense on Yah's calendar? It does make sense. And I'll tell you why. Oftentimes we see things in 13s. So for instance, we have 12 tribes of Israel until Yaakov blesses the two sons of Yosef and incorporates them into the family. And all of a sudden, it goes over the top of Joseph and becomes 13 tribes. We have a similar thing with the 12 disciples of Mashiach, with the appointment of Matthias Barnabas. He becomes the 12th apostle, and then yet Paul also comes on as an apostle, the 13th apostle. So yes, we have 12, but sometimes 13. And this is the same thing with the calendar. That's why you see it is consistent. So so Bethany Ephraim says, Dr. P, please explain the Russian missile, the RS-28 Sarmat. Okay, so the RS-28 Sarmat is the most destructive missile ever built by anybody ever in the history of mankind. And this is a missile that the Russians have recently begun deploying. The Russians, if you recall, have launched the most significant nuclear detonation in the history of man Initially, it was the Sarmat, which was estimated at 538 kiloton. But recently, they've touched off a nuclear weapon on the island of Tonga that appears to be 750 kiloton, at least according to engineers at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. So a 750 kiloton nuclear weapon is an extremely powerful weapon, very devastating. Though its width of destruction is enormous. I mean, the initial width of destruction is 30 miles in circumference, and you have an additional destruction of about another 80 miles outside of that. And so the Sarmat II, the RS-28 Sarmat II, carries 15 of these warheads, and they're on MIRVed warheads. So this missile launches, and it launches at 12,000 miles an hour. It's unstoppable by anything we have. And then when it gets close to its target, it MIRVs in multiple reentry vehicles. And those multiple reentry vehicles have 15 separate targets, each of them carrying the 750 kiloton weapon. So such a missile, one of those put over the UK, for instance, would completely render the UK destroyed. It would be nothing left. There'd be nothing left. And it's the same thing over the United States. In fact, they believe they can virtually destroy the United States with 2 of them. And remember, they travel at 12,000 miles an hour. So they're virtually unstoppable and even undetectable. Now, Bethany writes, I feel sorry for Lithuania. You have a wonderful friend from there. Yes, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they're all small countries, that really hinge in Europe. They really are more European than they are Slavic. But Lithuania has picked this fight, and it's, they haven't picked it. They've been instructed to pick it by their NATO bosses, and it's the Lithuanians that are going to pay the price, possibly. But NATO may also pay a price as well. Okay, and so here, Yosef says, I find a lot of similarities with Amharic, or the Ethiopian language, and the Ivrit. Yeah, and I can tell you that many of the languages that stem out of that area are Ivrit-based, particularly if you go back to the Paleo-Hebrew and then expand out into the alphabets, even the Aramaic, even the Arabic, the modern Arabic, is a downstream language from the ancient Hebrew. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so Brian LaPointe says there's also a 13th constellation. Yeah, there's many constellations, but 13 could be considered in that initial count. Carolyn asked the question, is Mystery Babylon's today's Jerusalem, where Yeshua was crucified? Now, this is a great question, Carolyn. There are people who believe that is the case. But again, when you start talking about Mystery Babylon, you're talking about a place that is going to have the indicia of Babylon. That is to say, it's going to be consistent with what we talked about before, Chaldean practices of astrology, certain calendars, certain alphabets, and the primary feasts that mark them is this idea of Sol Invictus worship and Ishtar worship. So the fertility rites, very common, and the practice of astrology, those are both very common in that particular Babylonian genre. Okay, so ZC asks, will the second Exodus occur? The second Exodus may be occurring as we speak. Remember that the wilderness is sometimes not a place, but it is a spiritual place, not a physical place. What I personally believe is happening right now is you're seeing the ripening of both the wheat and the tares. And so Stephanie writes, NATO, the mafioso. Well, NATO is certainly is definitely trying to get a war going between the West and Russia. There's no question. I mean, that's what's going on. They want a war, and they're going to get one. Yes, so Bethany says, stunned to hearing about the missile Sarmat 1 and Sarmat 2. Yeah, the Sarmat 2 is it's a huge missile. It's a very deadly missile. And they've already deployed, they have several on the tarmac right now. They intend to have 50 by the end of this year. And so that's going to be a situation. Now, Pat wants to know about the timing of tomorrow's program on LAM Messianic TV. That will be at 10:30 my time. It'll be 11:30 Pacific time, and you can figure out from there, 11:30 Pacific time. Okay. Yes, have the fullness of the Gentiles been completed? Yeah. Has the fullness of the Gentiles been completed? Well, I would say yes. Why would I say yes? Because now we've moved from the fullness of the Gentiles into apostasy and the great divorce. So that's essentially what's happening. Okay. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to thank you for your questions. Thank you for being present tonight. I know tonight's presentation is a little bit short, but that's because I didn't get enough time to do really how much as I wanted to do, but I was inspired to talk about the Wrath of Indignation. I hope you find this informative, and please share it. Subscribe if you want to chat here. If you want to be a part of the live chat, you got to subscribe. And if you will share this, I really appreciate it. Visit us at Sefer.net. Visit us. Oh, by the way, one other announcement on Sefer Academy. I think we're going to go directly out of the Aleph Beit right into the 10 commandments, the 10 Devarim. So there will not be a week that will be shut down for those of you who are students of the classes. You will be able to continue your class right after we finish the Aleph Beit. We're going to go right into the 10 Devarim. Okay. So if you're interested in that, come visit us at seferacademy.net, seferacademy.net, and you guys can jump right into the program. Debbie Johnson says, are these nuclear missiles? Oh yeah, they're very definitely nuclear missiles. There are 750 kiloton nuclear missiles. Now the EMP, they claim that it's a non-nuclear missile that has nuclear capability, but it uses a different kind of precision. So it would not kill human beings, at least directly. Okay. Okay, so wait, Daily Jacobson says, Dr. Bridget, are you forgetting the migration of the 10 tribes of Israel after the Assyrian Empire weakened the 722 BC we're looking for? Who's who? Oh, no. No, those tribes are all inclusive. But when we talk about the Chaldeans have a specific mark, and a specific mark of migration. And the Chaldeans, being this tribe of Nahor, the brother of Abraham, came north through the Hittite Empire into Central Europe. They're very well marked and distinct from the tribes of Israel. Okay, they're very distinct from the tribes of Israel. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, well, thank you guys. Thank you for being present, and blessings to you. And we will see you next week. Okay, thanks so much.